Shocking truth revealed. Black man wrongly accused as suspect discovered to be police chief. In the heart of a city buzzing with life, Marcus sat in his barbershop, the warm hum of clippers a familiar soundtrack. People came in for haircuts, but they left with hope, laughter, and connection. Each face told a story. His grandmother, Clara, usually nearby, dispensed wisdom like candy. Her laughter floated through the room, knitting the community together. But that laughter turned into hushed whispers one stormy afternoon. As a dark cloud loomed over his barbershop, a series of unsolved crimes had shaken the neighborhood. "Did you hear about Marcus?" someone murmured. "They say he is involved." The rumor spread like wildfire. Marcus felt his chest tighten as he overheard the excited voices outside, the trust eroding like salt in water. Friends he'd known for years now hesitated to come in. All he'd ever wanted was to uplift. Now he was being torn down. Clara watched him with concern, her eyes flickering with a blend of fear and anger. "You know you're not guilty, right?" she whispered, but the cracks in her voice told him she was afraid the world outside wouldn't see it that way. The streets, once a canvas of community spirit, were now painted with suspicion. He was cornered, questioning the very bonds he thought were unbreakable. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. The tension in the community grew thicker. Some neighbors gathered outside the barbershop, creating a makeshift vigil in support of him, while others threw around accusations fueled by sensational media. "He is not a villain," an older woman shouted, her voice rising. "He has always helped us." But doubt was a stubborn weed. It spread through conversations, suffocating friendships. Then the earth shook. As if by providence, a local investigator, interwoven in the community's trust, revealed the truth. Marcus had been working undercover, trying to catch the very criminals who were ripping apart their neighborhood. The revelation shifted everything. The neighbors felt a weight lift, but they also wrestled with the betrayal that stemmed from their own doubt. "He was protecting us all along," a young man exclaimed, his disbelief turning to admiration. But Marcus's journey was just beginning. Would they see him as the hero he turned out to be, or would their initial judgment trap him in a narrative he never wanted? It was a tightrope walk between loyalty and prejudice, and both sides were forced to face their biases head-on. Hope glimmered in the midst of turmoil. As the sun set, casting golden light on the faces gathered, it became apparent that they could reclaim their community as spirit. An unspoken bond began to rebuild itself. Every moment was alive with possibility and invitation to understand and heal. The neighborhood stood at a crossroads, wrestling with justice, redemption, and an aching desire for wholeness. As they reflected, a single question hung thick in the air. Could they let go of prejudice and embrace the man who had always championed resilience? Marcus peered into the crowd of faces, both familiar and drawn from the edges of suspicion. This was just the beginning. Together, they could redefine what it meant to be a community. What would it take to emerge stronger from the shadows? The air was electric with anticipation, as the news of Marcus's true identity spread through the crowd like wildfire. Whispers turned into shouts of disbelief, anger, and even a hint of admiration. The sun dipped lower, bathing the street in a warm glow, as if nature too acknowledged the seismic shift occurring beneath the surface. Marcus stood, heart racing, the rhythm of hope pounding within him. He could feel Clara's supportive gaze, steady and unwavering in the tumult. The day had been long, filled with uncertainty, and now the most painful moments seemed to crackle with possibility. "This is our chance, Marcus," Clara declared, stepping beside him. They need to see you for who you really are. But as the crowd stirred, he saw faces contorted with confusion. Some wanted to cheer, while others seemed to wrestle with where their loyalties lay. Why didn't anyone tell us? One man shouted, the frustration boiling over. Why keep it a secret? The anger hung heavy, a reminder of how fragile trust could be, how easily it could shatter. Because I wanted to protect you, Marcus called out, his voice firm but calm. I couldn't risk everything falling apart if the wrong people knew. I was trying to keep this community safe. Silence fell, punctuated only by the hesitant rustle of leaves overhead. This was more than an explanation. It was a plea and a promise wrapped in one. Would they listen? Would they understand? I've cut your hair, listened to your stories, he continued, his heart laid bare. I've shared your burdens and your joys. I'm one of you. All I did was wear a badge to fight back against the darkness that has been creeping into our lives. Slowly, the crowd began to shift. Someone stepped forward, a young woman who had once made sure to be first in line for a haircut every Saturday. You were out there for us, Marcus, and we didn't even know. Her voice cracked, emotion welling in her eyes. I'm sorry for doubting you. Others echoed her sentiments. Apologies came streaming forth, words laced with regret, healing unfolding like petals after a storm. But even amidst the comfort, Marcus sensed unease that would not fade easily. The question of trust lingered like smoke in the air. He understood that forgiveness required work, and sometimes progress could mean wrestling with our own shortcomings. Encouraged by the moment, Clara raised her voice to rally those around them. Let us come together, truly come together. We can make this right. There is strength in unity, strength in knowing who we are as a community. The energy changed, now charged with a collective hope, a shared determination to cast aside doubt and shame. Plans began to take shape. A community meeting, a chance to heal, to talk, and most importantly to listen. The barbershop would host gatherings, forums for honest discussion about the scars left behind, and how to nurture a stronger, more resilient neighborhood spirit. As recognition of the moment sunk in, Marcus felt the weight of his journey pressing down on him. He was more than just the barbershop owner, more than a chief in disguise. He was a man proud of where he came from and determined to move forward. Yet, as it often does, darkness loomed in the distance. What about the criminals still out there? Someone whispered, tension creeping back in. And as Marcus turned towards them, he felt that familiar knot in his stomach. The battle was far from over. Could they band together and confront the danger lurking beyond their newfound unity? Would they be able to protect their home after all they had endured? The night lay ahead, thick with uncertainty, and a challenge that threatened to test them once again. The murmurs of the crowd hung in the warm air, uncertainty mixing with each heartbeat. Marcus looked into Clara's eyes, a steady source of strength amid the chaos. Yet even her unwavering support couldn't shake the looming shadows of the criminals that had plagued their community for too long. Tonight isn't just about finding out who I am, he said, urgency cutting through the doubt. It's about understanding that we're in this together. We can't let fear define us as a community. The faces around him began to soften, but the questions remained. How? Someone called out in challenge. How do we fight what we can't see? With each worried glance exchanged among the crowd, Marcus felt the weight of responsibility resting on his shoulders. He raised a hand, calling for silence once more. We're going to gather all the information we can. We'll share what we know. It starts with us here and now. We take back our streets together. Clara stepped forward, her voice ringing out. That is right. We know these streets better than anyone else. Let us create a watch meet regularly, swap stories and information. If we work together, we can shine a light on the darkness that seems to creep in. There was a moment of hesitation, then, as if one spark ignited another, heads nodded up and down. Yes! A community watch! Someone shouted, a hopeful grin breaking out across their face. The energy surged again, conversation sparking like fireworks around Marcus and Clara. The anxiety that had shrouded the crowd began to lift, replaced by determination and purpose. But the relief was still deeply shaded by lingering worry. As the group started forming small circles to discuss their ideas, Marcus felt a soft tap on his shoulder. Turning, he was met by the young woman who had first stepped forward to support him. "Marcus," she said tentatively, twirling a lock of her hair, eyes bright but troubled. "I want to help. My brother, he has been involved with some tough crowds. I've been worried about him." His heart sank. "If he has mixed up with the wrong people, I know," she admitted, her voice quiet. "But I can't just turn my back on him." The complexity of family loyalty pained him. You want to help him, but you also want to keep your community safe. It's a rough position to be in. Have you ever had to choose between your family and your duty? Marcus studied her, the vulnerability in her expression hitting him hard. Yes, and it's brutal. But sometimes, the hardest choices reveal who we truly are. Just then, a tumultuous noise erupted from the far side of the street, pulling their attention. Everyone turned, tension flooding the air again. Figures came into view, unfamiliar and ominous. A knot formed in the pit of Marcus's stomach as he realized that the challenge was now thrust upon them sooner than he expected. "What is happening?" Clara voiced their collective concern, stepping closer to Marcus. "I don't know," he replied, putting himself between her and the oncoming threat. Uncertainty hung heavy in the air, and in that moment, Marcus felt the weight of his community behind him, fragile yet fierce. Could this be the moment their trust would be tested again? Or would the shadows that had haunted their streets finally step into the light? The answer rushed toward them, a storm brewing on the horizon. Fear and hope intermingled as they braced for whatever was to come next. "Stay close," he warned, his heart beating in sync with the unyielding rhythm of the night. What kind of choice would he have to make now? Who would rise and who would fall? The figures drew nearer, illuminated by the dim streetlights silhouetting them in hard shadows. They were not simply a few stragglers, but a sizable group, hardened faces that spoke of tough lives and rough choices. A few wore bandanas like masks, hiding their identities, while others sported tattoos that twisted down their arms like vines of rebellion. As the tension thickened, Clara grasped Marcus's arm, her fingertips pressing into his flesh as if anchoring him in place. "What do we do?" she whispered, her eyes darting from Marcus to the approaching figures. There was no backing down now. The community had gathered behind him, their mixed faces showing determination, fear, and uncertainty all at once. "We stand together," Marcus replied, trying to project confidence he didn't quite feel. He took a deep breath, allowing the collective energy to wash over him. The lead figure stepped forward, his posture radiating menace. "What are you doing out here?" It was a challenge, a way of asserting dominance in a territory that felt increasingly hostile. The crowd murmured, shifting restlessly, but Marcus held his ground. "We're uniting as a community," he shouted back, his voice cutting through the night air. "We're taking back our streets." "Take back?" The figure laughed, a cruel sound that echoed in the darkness. "You think you can just take it back? You don't even know how deep the roots go." "Enough." Clara's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. "You think fear gives you power? We're tired of living in the shadows. We're ready to fight for our home." The figure paused, and for a moment, doubt flickered across his face. It was almost comical how a simple sentence could halt the aggression. But the hesitation was brief. "You're a joke," he spat, stepping forward, arms flexed with intimidation. Just then, the unmistakable sound of sirens echoed through the street, momentarily drowning out the tension. But instead of relief, The figures exchanged glances, their composure faltering only slightly. "They're coming," one of their ranks muttered, taking a step back as the lights flashed nearer. The threat of law enforcement hung heavy, distorting their earlier bravado. Marcus turned to Clara, and in her gaze, he saw a flicker of hope bloom. "It's now or never," he whispered, heart racing. They needed to take control. "We need to create a barrier. Protect each other. Together," she yelled, rallying the community. Heads lifted, voices rose, and they formed a solid line, a wall of unity against the approaching threat. But not just the criminals, they had their fears to face too. "Stay behind us," Marcus directed the others, positioning himself in front. The shadows loomed over them, but their own light shined brighter. With instant tension, the figures unleashed a torrent of words, taunts, and threats, but their bravado began to strain. The sirens grew louder. Officers would soon descend, but this moment mattered. This was a testament and awakening. "Let this be your choice," Clara shouted, her voice imbued with the courage only a sister could muster. "Will you stand with us, or will you break?" The lead figure sneered, then stepped forward, and Marcus's heart stuttered. This was the decisive moment. Would he cave to fear? Or would he stand firm in solidarity? Suddenly, out of the shadows, a voice rang clear, "Stop!" The crowd turned. The sound was unmistakably authoritative, pulling every eye. The police chief himself appeared, stepping out of the darkness, eyes wide with understanding as they landed on Marcus. "What is happening here?" the chief asked, the intensity of the moment bringing a hush over all present. But the look exchanged between Marcus and the chief spoke volumes. Would this be the moment they either sealed their bond or shredded hope altogether? As they locked eyes, Marcus knew decisions were being made, ones that could change everything. Would this be the turning point they all needed? The answer sat heavy in the balance, wavering between fear and the electrifying power of community. Would the truth finally reveal itself? The police chief stepped forward, his uniform stirring unease among the crowd. In that moment, both sides fell silent. Clara's fingers tightened around Marcus's arm, her breath hitching in her throat. She could sense the shift, and so could everyone else. What was he doing here? "Listen," the chief said, voice steady as granite. "What is happening here is bigger than just a confrontation. This community is hurting, and I understand that." His eyes scanned the faces of the people gathered, some anxious, others simmering with anger. An unexpected calmness washed over Marcus, but he couldn't shake off the comparison swirling in his mind. "Understand?" The lead figure spat, disbelief twisting his features. "Do you really think you can just smooth this over? You don't know us." "Maybe you're right," the chief replied, his tone now dipped in sincerity. "But I'm here to listen. I want to understand." Clara caught a glimpse of something in the chief's expression, a flicker of empathy buried beneath his authority. Marcus felt a surge of hope, pushing against the doubt that had gripped him tight. What if this night shifted into something transformative? The tension in the air was palpable. But before that moment could fully settle, the lead figure stepped closer, fists clenched. "Your presence doesn't change anything. You're still just a badge in our neighborhood." The others murmured in agreement, nodding as panic and defiance rose among the ranks. "No," Marcus shouted, cutting through the impending chaos. He had felt the fear, yes, but he also felt the strength of his community behind him. "We can't let this turn into violence. We came here to change things, not make them worse." "What do you know about change?" The figure barked, but Marcus carried on, igniting courage in his own voice. "I know that we're all tired. Tired of being afraid in our own homes. Tired of our streets being riddled with violence. But it starts with us, everyone here too." A hush fell over the crowd once more, the silence becoming heavy with contemplation. Clara glanced at the chief, searching for a response, any sign that this was more than just talk. Marcus is right, the chief added, his eyes narrowing at the lead figure. I want to hear your stories. I want to know what you're experiencing. If you will give me the chance, I assure you I'll listen. The air crackled with tension as the figure hesitated. Internal conflict played across his face. Others murmured, glancing at one another, uncertain. The night felt precarious. Would this make or break them? Would they trust the one sworn to protect? Moments turned to seconds, each heartbeat resonating like a drum. Then, slowly, the lead figure stepped back, a glimmer of hesitation crossing his features. You want to listen? He asked, tone suddenly less assured. You'll hear things you might not want to. I need to hear everything, the chief replied firmly, his eyes shining with determination. And what happens if you don't? Clara challenged, stepping beside Marcus. A unified front, the community closely knit. We'll find a way, the chief answered, meeting her gaze with resolve. But I can't promise anything without the truth. Each word seemed to pull the crowd into a pause, a moment of hope in the darkness. Would they let down their guard? As murmurs turned into hesitant conversations, Marcus felt the shift. It was not just the community standing against the figures anymore, but a coalition united by shared experience and a desperate need for change. But just as the tide seemed to turn, a high-pitched scream shattered the night. A gunshot rang out, echoing off the walls like a thunderclap. Chaos erupted, shouts blending with the wails of sirens growing closer, the fragile moment twisting back into a nightmare. Get down! Marcus yelled, pushing Clara behind him, adrenaline surging through his veins. What now? Would this be the tipping point they feared? As darkness and panic enveloped them, the line between safety and chaos shattered. In that critical moment, he just wanted to know, would they fight together or tear each other apart? The gunshot echoed like a painter's brutal stroke across a canvas, leaving chaos where hope had just begun to bubble. Marcus felt the ice-cold grip of fear coil around his heart. It was hard to breathe, a physical weight pressing down on his chest as he scanned the crowd. Clara clung to him, her eyes wide and terrified. He felt her trembling against him as screams surged around them, blending into a cacophony of panic. Stay low, he hissed, crouching in the alleyway. But even as he said the words, his gaze darted to the police chief, who stood frozen, his expression masking shock beneath the badge that now felt like an anchor. The chief's eyes flicked from the lead figure to the crowd. Everyone, I need you to listen. The chief shouted above the chaos. Stay calm, stay where you are. The crowd, a mix of fear and disbelief, watched him. For a moment, it seemed as if they might listen. But then another scream sliced through the night, and the panic returned, unrelenting. People pushed each other, scrambling to get away from the sound, from the fear that engulfed them. Clara! Marcus turned to her, forcing himself to maintain eye contact. We need to find a way. Where? She shouted back, her voice shaking. Where do we go in all this madness? Marcus saw movement to his left, shadows weaving through the dark, some familiar faces, others unknown. Over there. He pointed to a small group, a few neighbors rushing toward a doorway, pushing one another inside. Now! He urged, grabbing her hand and pulling her along, weaving through the hastily retreating crowd. With every step, the weight of the night pressed down harder. They narrowly avoided a stampede of bodies pushing backward. Sirens wailed closer now, their shrill cries sending chills down Marcus's spine. He couldn't shake the feeling that the chaos was just beginning. Clara stumbled slightly, and he pulled her up against him protectively as they reached the door. Inside was dark and cramped, the flickering light from a single bulb casting eerie shadows on the wall. We're okay, he whispered, though he wasn't sure himself. We have to stay quiet. The room swallowed their heavy breathing. Marcus looked around, catching glimpses of faces, his neighbor's fear mirrored in their eyes. They were all connected by this moment, tied together by uncertainty and shared horror. Suddenly, muffled voices penetrated the silence. "Did you see who it was?" One voice rose above the rest. "Was it a gang? Was it the cops?" Another questioned, anxiety coursing through the small group. "Keep quiet. This isn't the time." Someone hissed back, and silence reigned again. Clara squeezed Marcus's hand, her fear creeping back. What did they know? Who had pulled the trigger? As the weight of uncertainty loomed like a storm cloud over them, a voice broke through the added tension. The chief stood outside, shouting again. "I need you to trust me. I'm here to help. I'll find out who did this." But his words felt fragile in the chaos, a warm breeze against the cold reality. Would they trust him? Could anyone remain steadfast when theirs had become a world of shadows and doubt? "Marcus," Clara's voice quivered, breaking into the stillness. "What do we do if he can't protect us?" He wanted to say something reassuring, something absolute. Instead, all he could offer was a deep breath as another siren wailed nearby. The truth hung heavy, a burning question that seared into his brain. What if they couldn't find a way to peace? As uncertainty tightened its grip around him, he caught a flicker of something, a shadow darting at the corner of his eye. There it was again, lurking beyond the doorway, cloaked in secrets he knew they were all desperate to discover. "Clara," Marcus whispered urgently, "we need to find out what really happened. If not today, then when?" Little did he know that the answers they sought could shatter the fragile thread that now held their community together. The tense silence in the cramped room felt thick enough to cut. Marcus felt the pulse of uncertainty in the air. Clara's grip on his hand tightened, her breath hitching as whispers slithered through the group. They were all waiting for something, anything that would bring clarity to the chaos outside. Why would the chief say yes there to help? A man's voice broke through the murmurs, fear wrapped in accusation. "How do we know he isn't part of this?" Marcus's mind raced. The man was right to point fingers. There was no way to trust in a world turned upside down. If panic could make enemies of neighbors, who else was hiding a secret? "Focus," Marcus said, his voice steady, forcing himself to be the calm amidst the turmoil. "We need to think. Clara, remember what we saw from the alley?" Clara frowned, her brow creasing. "The figure was dressed in black?" "Yeah." The memory flashed vividly, a dark silhouette slipping away just before the shot rang out. It might be connected. But how? The others stirred restlessly, shifting in their cramped space. Someone took a cautious step toward the door, peering through the cracked window. "I see lights. Cars everywhere. They're blocking the streets." Marcus's stomach twisted. The sirens, the chaos, and this mystery loomed over them like a storm cloud ready to burst. "We have to get out of here," he declared, hesitating for a moment as the unease settled upon him. "But we can't just run blind. We need a plan." Clara looked at him, those frightened eyes searching for a spark of courage. "But what if they catch us? What if they think we're involved?" He wrestled with her fear, the heaviness of his heartbeat echoing his own. "We can't let fear rule us. We find out what happened. We don't leave anything to chance." A woman in the corner, her features half-lit by the flickering bulb, chimed in. "That's insane. We can't go out there with the cops everywhere, looking for someone." "But if we stay here, we're trapped," Marcus countered, glancing back at Clara. "We can't just hide. If the chief really is involved, we need proof." "Proof?" The man who had questioned the chief echoed back. "What good will that do? We need to figure out who can help us." "But we could be helping ourselves finding the truth," Marcus pressed. "Maybe we need to find out who that figure was. We saw them leave. We can track them down." The weight of Marcus's words hung in the air, igniting a flicker of something, perhaps hope, or dare he say resolve? Eyes began to widen, shifting from fear to anticipation. Okay, let us say we do this, Clara finally said, her tone shifting as she raised her chin. What is the first step? Marcus took a breath, feeling the air crack with determination. We sneak outside, find a way to the nearest police car. We could listen in. If the chief is lying, then they must have something to say. A tense agreement shook the room. They gathered their courage, whispers of support flowing between them. As they prepared to head out, Marcus felt a familiar flicker of adrenaline crawl up his spine. But then something nagged at him, a thought that felt more like dread. Just be careful. No one knows what to trust anymore. Whatever we find, it might change everything, he warned. As they turned toward the door, he caught another movement in the shadows outside, the flicker of a figure darting behind a nearby car. Heart racing, he felt Clara's breath catch as she pulled him back. Marcus, she started, and he could see her fear spark back to life. What is it? He asked, barely above a whisper, feeling the intensity shift like rolling thunder. What if they find us first? And in that instant, he saw the truth behind her eyes. They weren't just searching for a suspect. They were searching for safety. As they stood teetering on the edge of action, he could only wonder what kind of danger awaited them outside. Then we run, he whispered back fiercely. Together. Just as they prepared to step through the door, a loud crash rang out from a distance, echoing like the final call to arms. Was it the truth waiting to break free, or was it the line being drawn in the sand? They exchanged a resolute glance, and with one deep breath, they stepped into the unknown. What awaited them could either bind them closer or tear their fragile world apart. Would the truth truly set them free, or would its revelation only plunge them deeper into chaos? Marcus held his breath as he opened the door, the cool night air washing over them like a wave, heavy with tension and uncertainty. Clara squeezed his hand tighter, her fingers trembling slightly. They stepped into the shadows, their forms barely visible against the dimly lit street. The chaos outside buzzed like a swarm of angry bees. Blue and red lights flashed in the distance, spinning wildly as they illuminated the faces of onlookers gathered by police cars. Marcus felt the weight of 1,000 eyes on them, each glancing in their direction, silently asking what they were doing here, but he pushed that thought aside. They had to move. Stay close, he whispered, leading Clara down the narrow path between two buildings. Their footsteps felt loud against the pavement, echoing the pounding of his heart. Marcus tried to calm his racing thoughts. They needed a plan, and fast. Do you see anything? Clara asked breathlessly, peeking around the corner of the building. Marcus squinted into the distance. He spotted a police vehicle parked a few yards away. The officers were busy talking amongst themselves, their backs turned. This was their chance. There. He gestured toward the car. They crept along the shadows, sticking close to the walls, their hearts pounding with every cautious step. The sounds of laughter and shouting punctuated the panic that hung above them like a thick fog. Marcus, what if we're wrong about this? What if the chief isn't doing anything wrong? Clara's voice was barely above a whisper, trembling with doubt. Marcus hesitated. He liked to think he had faith in his choices, but reality was wearing thin. Maybe he isn't, but what if he is? If he is involved, the truth can't stay buried. With every step closer to the police car, the looming uncertainty grew heavier. As they neared the vehicle, Marcus's pulse quickened. He could hear snippets of conversation. The tone was frantic, urgent. Not in the report, something doesn't add up, one officer said, frustration sharp in his voice. Marcus exchanged a glance with Clara, who looked ready to bolt. He took a deep breath before leaning slightly closer to the open window of the police car, straining to hear more. Did you see that guy? The one who disappeared? Another officer questioned, throwing glances at the crowd. He was right there during the shooting. Parker, called the first officer, his voice raised. I think he was compromised. We need to get to the bottom of this before everyone bails. The urgency in their voices hit Marcus like a cold splash of water. Who was compromised? Did you catch his name? Clara murmured beside him, eyes wide with fear. No, Marcus bit his lip. The tension was palpable. But whatever it is, we need to know who that figure was. It's the only way to begin unraveling this. Suddenly, a loud shout rang out nearby, pulling their attention. Clara went rigid. What was that? Don't move, Marcus hissed, stepping back into the shadows just as an officer hurried past them, looking ready to confront whatever disturbance had caught his eye. Marcus, we can't just stay here, Clara hissed. What if they find us? They won't, he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. Not if we stay in the dark. A plan started forming. We need to find that figure. We need to find out who he was. And fast. As the officers shifted their focus on the shout, fear tickled Marcus's spine. They had to move soon. But just as they were about to duck deeper into the shadows, another loud crash echoed behind them, sending a burst of adrenaline through their veins. What was that? Clara gasped, fear latching onto her voice. In that moment, Marcus understood they weren't just witnesses to chaos. They were now part of it. The air crackled with tension, filled with unspoken threats. And as they turned to peek around the corner, prepared to sprint down the alley, they caught sight of someone moving through the crowd, a figure cloaked in black. Their heartbeats synced in fear. What now? Is that him? Clara whispered, breathless with anticipation. Let us find out, Marcus replied, knowing he was leading them down a road of uncertainty. What truths would unveil themselves in the chaos ahead? The figure in black glided through the throng of people, their movements fluid yet deliberate, like a shadow chasing whispers of secrets. Marcus squinted harder, trying to discern features through the maze of faces illuminated by police lights. Clara's breath quickened beside him, a mix of fear and curiosity. There's gotta be a way to find out if that's him, she breathed, her eyes darting nervously. Should we call someone? No, Marcus said, shaking his head. The last thing they needed was for anyone to know they were out here. Let us stick to the shadows and follow him. We can't lose sight of him. They darted out from their hiding spot, clinging to the edges of walls and alleyways, moving cautiously in pursuit of the cloaked figure. Marcus's heart raced, a frantic drum in his chest, drowning out the sounds of the night. Clara followed close, her footsteps light, but the tension in the air wrapped tightly around them, squeezing the breath from their lungs. The figure led them away from the chaos of the street into a darker side alley. It was quieter here, and the distant sirens faded into an eerie silence. Marcus felt a chill creep up his spine. What if the figure was dangerous? What if they were walking into a trap? But this was their chance and opportunity to uncover what lay beneath the surface of the pandemonium. As they rounded a corner, Clara stopped abruptly, her eyes wide. What if he knows we're behind him? What if we're not the only ones looking for answers? Then we need to be smarter, Marcus replied, trying to keep his voice steady. He took a step forward and risked a whisper, let us split up. I'll take the left side of the alley, and you take the right. We'll surround him, figure out who he is. Are you sure that's a good idea? Clara hesitated, a flicker of doubt dancing in her eyes. Trust me, he said, squeezing her hand one last time. I'll meet you back here in 5 minutes. Just keep your distance. With a nod, they moved apart, slipping into the shadows like ghosts. Marcus kept his eyes trained on the figure as he edged along the alley. The figure paused momentarily, scanning the area, and for a heartbeat, Marcus felt as if he might be seen. His breath hitched in his throat, but the figure turned away and continued to move deeper into the darkness. He followed cautiously, dodging trash bins and other obstacles, heart pounding louder in his ears. And then, just as he was about to call out to Clara, the figure stopped in front of a small door, seemingly hidden from view. A dull, yellow light flickered from within, casting odd shadows. "Clara," Marcus whispered, glancing back over his shoulder. She wasn't in sight. A knot twisted in his stomach. Had she been caught? The thought made him take a deeper breath. He couldn't let fear stop him now. He stepped closer, pressing against the wall, as he strained to hear the conversation unfolding inside the room. Voices emerged, the words muffled but the tension clear. "We need to silence him before he talks." Marcus's heart dropped. This was turning darker than he had imagined. He had to find a way to stop whatever was about to happen. He glanced back again, still no sign of Clara. Suddenly, the door creaked open, drawing his attention back. The cloaked figure slipped inside, and Marcus felt the instinctive push to follow. He couldn't let this moment slip by. As he was about to step forward, a firm hand clamped down on his shoulder. Swirling confusion and adrenaline flooded through him. "What are you doing here?" It was Clara, and her wide eyes mirrored his terror. "Marcus, we have to go. They're looking for us." His breath hitched again. "No, Clara, the truth is in there. We have to." A sudden crash from inside the room silenced them both, and the promise of answers began to crumble under the weight of urgency. What was that? Clara grabbed his arm, pulling him back into the safety of the shadows. "Come on," Marcus said, torn between fear and drive. "We need to find out what is going on." Without waiting for another word, he took off down the alley, ready to uncover the truth that could either save them or consume them completely. But deep down, his mind raced with thoughts of what they would face next. Could they really handle the shocking revelations that awaited? Or would darkness claim them before they could ever reach the light? The air felt charged as Marcus burst through the door, Clara right behind him. They were met by chaos, thick smoke swirling in the dimly lit room, and muffled shouts mingling with the sound of shuffling feet. The cloaked figure stood at the back, shrouded in shadow, with several others surrounding him. A tense standoff erupted as Marcus and Clara stepped into the fray, heartbeats hammering in their chests. "Who are you?" The lead figure turned, eyes glinting like a predator's. "Are you with him?" Marcus glanced back at Clara, their silent pact burning bright between them. "No, we're not with anyone, just trying to understand what is happening," he shouted, pushing his voice over the din. In the corner of the room, a familiar face emerged, a fellow neighbor, Mark, the one who had once spoken angrily against them at the barbershop. "Why did you come here?" Mark's face was twisted in confusion. "This isn't for you." "It is for us," Marcus replied, feeling a surge of determination. "If we're going to heal our community, we need to know what is being done in the dark. Some of us have been caught up in a web of deceit, and we have every right to get to the bottom of it." The words rang out, echoing in the dense room. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. Marcus felt Clara's hand slip into his, a tangible reminder of their bond. "These people," she said, her voice steady, "they're scared too. We can't treat them like enemies." "But they might be involved," Mark countered, crossing his arms defensively. "Maybe," Clara replied, "but they're not monsters. They're our neighbors. We all bear our own burdens." Tension hung in the air, thick as the smoke. The cloaked figure stepped forward, glancing from Clara to Marcus, his gaze measuring the intensity. "This isn't just about community. It's about power. You're playing with fire. Then let us help you extinguish it," Marcus blurted out, feeling the weight of the moment. The other figures paused, their breaths caught. "We can't keep living in fear. Whatever you've been involved with, let us bring it into the light. Together." The cloaked figure studied him, the intensity palpable, and for a fleeting second, doubt flickered in his eyes. "You think you can change things?" "Yes," Marcus replied with fiery conviction. But not if you forget who you are. You're from our community too. We can work together. Sharing burdens leads to strength. A murmur swept through the room. Eyes softened ever so slightly, catching the ripple of emotion. The cloaked figure clenched his fists, struggling between defiance and revelation. If you want to stand together, then understand this: the danger is real. We have enemies, powerful ones, who will do anything to keep their grip on the neighborhood. Health compromised if they stayed silent. The impulse to flee scratched at Clara's mind, but Marcus, holding on to hope, felt the moment shift. In that case, we need to unify, draw our strengths. We can create a shield from the outside pressures if we come together, he urged. It's not just about you or me, it's about all of us. Finally, the cloaked figure broke, and a nod escaped his lips, unmistakable acceptance. Then let us do this. But understand, it won't be easy. We'll face fire together. A collective sigh erupted, tension uncoiling as a sense of purpose filled the room. They couldn't hide any longer. It was all out in the open now. As they departed from the hidden room, stepping into the ever-brightening night, Marcus felt a sense of unity that had been absent for too long. Clara squeezed his hand, her face radiant with unexpected determination. We'll make it through this, she promised, eyes glinting with renewed hope. Together, Marcus reaffirmed, and with that, they marched toward the crowd gathering in the street, ready to face an uncertain future not just as allies, but as a community rising against the storm. With the police presence still looming overhead, the path ahead was fraught with challenges, but this was different. They had each other. They were armed with stories, trust, and a determination to reclaim their home. Hope blossomed, and somewhere in that collective heart of theirs, a change had sparked a flame they would nurture into a beacon for all. They were no longer just survivors of the night. They were warriors for their community. This was their fight now. And so it began a journey toward healing and understanding, where every voice would be heard, every story honored. In a world where shadows danced, they would become the light. As the crowd began to gather, Marcus took a deep breath, standing beside Clara, hand in hand, ready for what lay ahead. It was the moment they had all waited for. Now was the time to rise. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep us going. Comment your reactions and feelings about this powerful ending and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.